Hey guys, Ben here. Oris as a brand has been making a lot of good moves lately. It's released a lot of new watches that have gained quite the attention. And amongst one of those watches is the 41.5mm Oris Aquis. There are a lot of good divers in the sub $1,000 to $2,000 price tier, but I think this Aquis distinguishes itself in a positive way. The Oris Aquis as a watch line tends to wear a little bit smaller than its case diameter would suggest. I have actually owned the 39.5mm Aquis, and on paper that size is actually perfect for my 7.1 inch wrist, but upon trying it on, it fit a little bit too small and I ended up selling it. I think the Aquis fits a little bit smaller because of its narrow lug to lug width and its integrated lug design. I've actually done a review of the 39.5mm Aquis, so if you're considering on getting it, the link will be down in the description below. When I sold my 39.5mm Aquis, it left a void in my collection. I wanted to get another diver to kind of scratch that itch, but I wasn't a big fan of the proportion of the 43.5mm Aquis. Although it fits my wrist, the case diameter is a little bit too large for my personal preference, and the Oris Diver 65, in my opinion, is just structurally inept compared to the Aquis line. I knew that there are other great divers from other brands like Longines and Tag Heuer, but I just wasn't a big fan of the proportion and the design of their watches. But one day I was scrolling through Instagram and I realized that someone had posted something regarding a 41.5mm Aquis. So I immediately went on the Oris website to check if this was true, and lucky for me, they had released a 41.5mm Aquis. And this is when I realized that I needed to add this watch to my collection. Long story short, I decided to pull the trigger, and I've had the watch for a little over a week now, and I can definitively say that for my 7.1 inch wrist, this watch fits perfectly right within that sweet spot. It's neither too small nor too large, but I'll go more into sizing and specs later on in the review. So if you guys are ready, let's get right to it. So a little backstory on how I settled on this watch. So after selling my 39mm Aquis, for about 2 months I contemplated in between getting the 40mm Diver 65 with the blue dial or the 41mm Aquis, but obviously I settled on the Aquis instead. There were some shipping and inventory issues when I placed the order, so I ended up having to wait nearly a month for this watch. And for me, I'm really impatient in the sense that once I settle on a watch, I get really anxious about receiving it as soon as possible. But this purchase was unique in the sense that I had to wait nearly 3 months and my patience was tested. I feel that this watch is a keeper, not only because I had to go through such a journey to get it, but also the missus approves, and that's a big deal. And I know Rolex has been getting quite the buzz with their new Submariner release, but I think Oris deserves more attention with their recent line of Aquis releases. I think the Aquis is a great entry-level luxury diver alternative to a Submariner, and it even arguably provides better value for the money. As with many Oris watches, the reference for this watch is super long, so it'll be up in the screen. The Aquis line is relatively young. It's about a decade in age, but this particular watch was released earlier in 2020. In terms of movement, this Aquis uses the Oris 733 movement, based on the Sellita 200-1. It's automatic, it has minutes, hours, seconds, and a date window. The power reserve is 38 hours, and it's got 26 joules. The movement is quite mediocre for the price, but it does come with the benefit of universal serviceability. I love the Aquis, but one of its few cons is that it has a really low power reserve. Most watches nowadays have at least 50 hours of power reserve, and it would have been nice to see that on the Aquis. On the other hand, this does have an automatic movement, so if you wear it frequently enough, you shouldn't have to worry about adjusting the time every time you wear it. But even if you do have to wind it, hey, I see that as a time for you to bond with your watch. In terms of specs, the case diameter of this watch is actually about 41.2mm, not 41.5. The thickness is 13mm, so it gives off great presence without being overbearing. The dial is a deep sunburst blue, and it changes color based on the lighting. In low light situations, the dial looks more black, and in settings with more light, the dial appears to be more blue. And as you expect, the case is equipped with a sapphire crystal, so it's very scratch resistant. The bezel has a ceramic insert, and I think the Aquis has the most satisfying bezel action in its price tier. Here, give it a listen. The bezel on the Aquis has a very slight backplay, but out of many Seiko and Omega divers that I've experienced, this has the most satisfying bezel action, and it only falls short behind the Submariner, which is a great feat to have considering that the Aquis is only a quarter of the price of the Sub. The bezel is also easy to grip and turn, even when on wrist. One of Aquis's greatest asset, as well as a negative for some, is its integrated bracelet design. An integrated bracelet can be a zero if done incorrectly, but in my honest opinion, it's a hero in the case of the Aquis. The bracelet is linked with screws for security, and it has micro adjustability. The bracelet can be easily made to fit anyone's wrist, no matter the size, and also the bracelet is very comfortable. I do have to mention, if you do want to customize your Aquis with a strap, the standard straps you've already invested in will not work. You're gonna have to go with the OEM rubber or leather. But then again, I don't see a reason to change the bracelet. The center links of this bracelet is brush finished, while the outer links are polished. This gives the watch a little bit more of a blingy, dressy vibe, but unlike watches like the Rolex GMT Master, the polished links don't accrue fingerprints as easily, which is a plus. Also, the bracelet comes with a diver's extension, so this watch is perfect to go on top of your wetsuit when you're diving, or your winter coat on those chilly winter days. The watch's compact 48mm lug-to-lug distance, combined with the fact that the solid central links don't extend beyond the lugs, mean that anyone with a wrist size of 6 inches or higher can wear this watch without it looking silly. The 41mm Aquis fits very comparably to a 40mm Rolex or the 41mm previous generation Seamaster Professional, as you can see here. So if a 40mm watch is your sweet spot, this watch will get the job done. In terms of sizing, I think this 41mm Aquis is the most versatile out of its brothers. In terms of versatility, you can wear this watch pretty much for any occasion. This watch can be dressed both up and down. If you're considering on making this your only watch, this watch will get the job done without fail. Finally, let's talk about the lume. The lume is fairly bright, and it lasts for at least over an hour, so you shouldn't have trouble being able to tell the time in low light situations, like at night or underwater. If I had to judge the lume on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give this watch a solid 9. Now that I've covered this watch in detail, let's briefly go over the pros and cons. Pros. This watch as a whole is extremely well constructed. It feels solid and comfortable on the wrist. The finishing is well done, and the polished outer bracelet combined with this beautiful sunburst style makes this watch quite beautiful to admire. The bezel action is the crunchiest in its division, and the lume is great. The bracelet is held together with screws for extra protection, and it's got micro adjustability for easy adjustment. Finally, the movement can be universally serviced no matter where you are. For cons, there aren't too many cons for this watch, but if I had a nitpick, it would be the low 38-hour power reserve and its lack of strap customizability. In conclusion, although the Aquis is not a perfect watch by any means, it is superbly constructed and its value proposition is very high. Whether you're a desk diver or someone who's actively engaging in activities in the water, this watch should be able to meet all your needs. This watch is built like a tank, and quite frankly, it should be able to handle a lot of abuse. And in my humble opinion, out of all the other diver watches in its price tier, the Aquis comes out ahead. That'll be it for today, but comment down below what your thoughts are on this new Aquis. As always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for making it to the end, and I'll see you on the next video.